The Draconis scout ship hovered silently in Earth's orbit, its sensors scanning the blue planet below. Raxor, the seasoned Draconis explorer at the helm, sneered at the readouts. "Pathetic," he muttered, his scaled fingers dancing across the control panel. Another unremarkable world of primitive organics. As Raxor prepared to disengage and return to the Draconis fleet, a sudden alarm blared through the cockpit. The ship shuddered, systems flashing red across the displays. "No!" Raxor hissed, frantically working to stabilize the failing craft. But it was too late. The scout ship plummeted towards Earth's surface, blazing through the atmosphere. Miles below, in a dense forest, wildlife biologist Matthew Stevens looked up from his field notes. A bright streak cut across the night sky, followed by a distant boom that echoed through the trees. Matthew's scientific curiosity battled with his survival instincts. After a moment's hesitation, he grabbed his pack and headed towards the impact site. The twisted wreckage of Raxor's ship smoldered in a small clearing. As Matthew approached, his eyes widened at the sight of the decidedly non-human figure emerging from the craft. Raxor's reptilian features contorted in a mixture of pain and disgust as he surveyed his surroundings. "Hello?" Matthew called out cautiously, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Are you okay?" Raxor's head snapped towards the human, pupils contracting to slits. He let out a series of clicks and hisses, incomprehensible to Matthew's ears. The alien's body language, however, clearly conveyed contempt and superiority. Despite the language barrier and Raxor's obvious disdain, Matthew's scientific mind raced. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to study an extraterrestrial being. Moreover, he realized the potential threat this alien presence posed to Earth. He had to learn more. "I want to help," Matthew said slowly, pointing to the damaged ship. "Fix." Raxor's expression shifted slightly, recognition dawning that he might need this primitive creature's assistance. With obvious reluctance, he gestured for Matthew to approach the ship. As they worked side by side on the repairs, Raxor found himself begrudgingly impressed by the human's problem-solving skills and adaptability. Matthew, for his part, absorbed every detail he could about the alien technology and physiology. Unknown to both, their actions were setting larger events in motion. Deep in space, the Draconis High Command grew concerned over the prolonged silence from their scout ship. They dispatched a larger vessel to investigate, its powerful engines propelling it towards Earth. News of the approaching Draconis ship spread like wildfire through Earth's governments. Emergency sessions convened in capitals around the world. Some leaders advocated for peaceful first contact, while others pushed for immediate military action. The planet teetered on the brink of panic. Back in the forest, Matthew felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He had to convince Raxor of humanity's worth before the Draconis fleet arrived. The fate of Earth might well depend on the connection forged between a human wildlife biologist and a stranded alien explorer. As the Draconis ship neared, humanity stood at a crossroads. Would Earth be dismissed as pathetic, or would the resilience and ingenuity of its inhabitants prove otherwise? The answer lay in the hands of Matthew Stevens and the unlikely alliance he was forming with Raxor, the Draconis who thought he had Earth all figured out. As Matthew and Raxor worked side by side on the damaged scout ship, an uneasy alliance began to form. The human's ingenuity impressed the Draconis explorer, who found himself reevaluating his initial dismissal of Earth's inhabitants. Matthew, for his part, marveled at the alien technology while trying to bridge the communication gap. Using a stick, Matthew drew crude diagrams in the dirt, pointing to various parts of the ship and then to corresponding Earth objects. Raxor's reptilian features contorted in what Matthew hoped was understanding rather than disgust. Slowly, through a combination of gestures, drawings, and trial and error, they established a rudimentary form of communication. As the alien watched Matthew improvise tools from the surrounding forest to assist with repairs, Raxor's initial disdain gave way to curiosity. He began to realize that these humans, while technologically inferior, possessed a remarkable adaptability he hadn't anticipated. Their progress, however, was suddenly interrupted by the distant sound of approaching vehicles. Matthew's head snapped up, his eyes widening in alarm. "Oh no," he muttered, recognizing the telltale signs of a military operation. Raxor, sensing the human's distress, activated a holographic display on his wrist device. The projection showed multiple heat signatures converging on their location. Matthew pointed to the display, then to his own chest, trying to convey that these were his people, but potentially dangerous. Before they could decide on a course of action, the clearing was suddenly flooded with light. A voice boomed through a loudspeaker. "This is Colonel James Harper of the United States Military. We have you surrounded. Come out with your hands up." Matthew raised his hands slowly, stepping into view. "Wait, don't shoot. I'm Dr. Matthew Stevens, a wildlife biologist. There's an alien visitor here, but he's not hostile. We need to talk." Colonel Harper, a stern-faced man with graying hair at his temples, emerged from behind a line of armored vehicles. His eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. "Dr. Stevens, step away from the alien craft slowly." As Matthew complied, Raxor emerged from the shadow of his ship. The sight of the reptilian alien caused a ripple of tension through the assembled soldiers. Weapons were raised, fingers tightening on triggers. "Hold your fire," Harper barked, his voice cutting through the tension. He turned to Matthew, his expression a mixture of disbelief and unyielding commitment. "Explain. Quickly." Matthew launched into a rapid-fire explanation, detailing Raxor's crash landing and their attempts at communication and repair. As he spoke, Raxor's body language grew increasingly agitated. The alien's hand moved towards a device on his belt. "He's reaching for a weapon," a soldier shouted. In that moment, chaos erupted. Raxor activated his personal defense shield, a shimmering bubble of energy enveloping him. The soldiers opened fire, their bullets dissipating harmlessly against the shield. "Stop! Stop!" Matthew screamed, throwing himself between the military and Raxor. "This isn't helping. We need to work together." Colonel Harper, assessing the ineffectiveness of their weapons against the alien technology, raised his hand. "Cease fire!" The gunshots stopped abruptly, leaving an eerie silence punctuated only by the faint hum of Raxor's shield. Harper approached Matthew, his voice low and urgent. "We've just received word from High Command. A massive alien ship has entered our solar system. They're demanding information about a missing scout ship and threatening Earth with destruction. I'm guessing this is the missing scout?" Matthew nodded, the weight of the situation settling heavily on his shoulders. He turned to Raxor, who had deactivated his shield but remained tensed for action. Using their improvised sign language, Matthew conveyed the situation to the alien. Raxor's reptilian features shifted, his eyes widening in what Matthew interpreted as surprise. The Draconis explorer seemed to consider for a moment before making a series of gestures. Matthew turned back to Harper, translating as best he could. "He says the ship belongs to Admiral Zexthar, a high-ranking Draconis commander. Raxor's mission was to scout our planet, but he says they usually destroy primitive worlds to harvest resources." Matthew's voice shook slightly as he relayed this information. Harper's teeth clenched. "Then we need to convince them we're not so primitive. Dr. Stevens, can you work with Raxor, was it? See if he'll share any information that might help us communicate with this Admiral Zexthar." As Matthew nodded, a helicopter descended into the clearing. A woman in a lab coat stepped out, her dark hair whipping in the downdraft. She strode purposefully towards them, her eyes alight with scientific curiosity. "Dr. Elena Rodriguez, xenobiologist," she introduced herself briskly. "I was called in to study our extraterrestrial visitor." She turned to Raxor, her gaze analytical but not unkind. "Fascinating. The physiological implications of convergent evolution on a galactic scale are—" "Dr. Rodriguez," Harper interrupted, "we need practical information. Can you work with Dr. Stevens to establish better communication with Raxor? And I need you to study that ship. Anything you can learn about their technology could be crucial." Elena nodded, already pulling equipment from her pack. "Of course, Colonel. Dr. Stevens, shall we begin?" As the unlikely team of human scientists, military personnel, and a stranded alien explorer began their collaboration, the stakes couldn't have been higher. In orbit above them, Earth's most powerful telescopes tracked the approach of the Draconis ship, its massive form a dark promise of potential destruction. In cities across the globe, News of the alien ultimatum spread like wildfire. Panic gripped populations, stock markets plummeted, and governments scrambled to present a unified front in the face of an unprecedented threat. Military bases hummed with activity as armed forces worldwide prepared for a conflict unlike any in human history. Back in the forest clearing, Matthew, Elena, and Raxor huddled around the damaged scout ship. Elena's expertise in xenobiology proved invaluable as she quickly grasped the basics of Draconis physiology, allowing for more nuanced communication. Matthew's rapport with Raxor helped ease the alien's suspicions, fostering a cautious cooperation. As they worked, Raxor began to share more about Draconis technology. Elena's eyes lit up as she recognized principles that seemed to defy known physics. "If we can understand this," she murmured, her fingers tracing a complex circuit, "it could revolutionize our own technology, give us a fighting chance." Colonel Harper coordinated with his superiors, relaying information and receiving updates on the Draconis ship's approach. The alien vessel had entered the solar system, its size and power becoming terrifyingly apparent as it passed Jupiter's orbit. Time was running out. The fate of humanity now rested on the shoulders of a wildlife biologist, a xenobiologist, a military colonel, and a Draconis scout who had crash-landed on the very planet his people sought to destroy. As they raced against the clock, the question remained, could this unlikely alliance find a way to prevent Earth's annihilation and usher in a new era of interstellar relations? As the unlikely alliance worked tirelessly in the forest clearing, the enormity of their task loomed over them. Matthew wiped sweat from his brow, his hands covered in grease and alien substances he couldn't begin to identify. Beside him, Dr. Elena Rodriguez muttered rapid-fire observations into a handheld recorder, her dark eyes alight with scientific fervor. "The power coupling seems to utilize a form of quantum entanglement," Elena said, her fingers tracing a complex array of circuits. "If we can replicate this, it could revolutionize our energy infrastructure." Matthew nodded, his attention split between Elena's discoveries and Raxor's reactions. The Draconis scout hovered nearby, his scaled hands moving with surprising dexterity as he assisted in the repairs. Despite the language barrier, Matthew sensed a growing respect in Raxor's demeanor. A shout from Colonel Harper drew their attention. The military man strode toward them, his face a mask of almost unchecked urgency. "We've got movement," he announced. "The Draconis ship has entered the solar system. It's past Jupiter's orbit." The news sent a chill through the group. Matthew met Raxor's reptilian gaze, seeing his own concern mirrored in those alien eyes. They needed a breakthrough, and they needed it now. As if in answer to their desperation, Elena let out a triumphant cry. "I've got it!" She held up a small, pulsing device. "This is the key to their communication array. With some modifications, we should be able to restore functionality." The next few hours passed in a blur of feverish activity. Matthew and Elena worked in tandem, translating Raxor's gestures and applying their scientific expertise to merge human and Draconis technology. Colonel Harper coordinated with his superiors, his voice a constant backdrop of terse updates and rapid-fire orders. Finally, with a series of clicks and a low hum, the scout ship's communication array flickered to life. Raxor moved swiftly, his clawed fingers dancing over the controls. A holographic display materialized, showing the imposing form of the approaching Draconis vessel. "Is that," Matthew started. "Admiral Zexithar's ship," Raxor confirmed, speaking in halting English. The alien had been quietly absorbing the language, surprising them all with his linguistic progress. The communication link crackled with static before stabilizing. A deep, resonant voice filled the clearing, the Draconis language harsh and guttural to human ears. Raxor responded, his tone respectful but urgent. As the exchange continued, Matthew noticed a shift in the alien's posture. "What's happening?" he asked. Raxor turned to him, his expression unreadable. "Admiral Zexthar demands proof of my safety, of your cooperation." Colonel Harper stepped forward, his expression resolute. "Then we'll give him proof. Dr. Stevens, can you arrange a video transmission?" Matthew nodded, already moving to adjust the communication array. "I think so, but we'll need to boost the signal." Elena produced a device from her pack. This should do it. It's an experimental quantum amplifier we've been working on. As they prepared for the transmission, Harper spoke in low tones to a group of soldiers. Security tightened around the clearing, weapons at the ready but carefully out of sight. The holographic display flickered, resolving into the imposing image of Admiral Zexathar. The Draconis commander's scales gleamed with a metallic sheen, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the assembled humans. Matthew stepped forward, his heart pounding. He inclined his head in what he hoped was a respectful gesture. Admiral Zexathar, I am Dr. Matthew Stevens of Earth. We come in peace and offer our cooperation. The Admiral's gaze bore into him, assessing. After a tense moment he spoke, his words translated through Raxor. You have aided our scout and mastered our technology with surprising speed. Perhaps your species is not as primitive as we first believed. Harper moved to stand beside Matthew. We propose a ceasefire and face-to-face negotiations. We believe there is much our peoples can learn from each other. Admiral Zexathar considered this, his scaled features impassive. Finally, he nodded. I will dispatch a diplomatic vessel. My main ship will remain in orbit as a precaution. Prepare your leaders. We will discuss the fate of your world. As the transmission ended, a collective exhale swept through the clearing. The immediate threat had passed, but the real challenge was just beginning. News of the impending alien delegation spread rapidly. Governments worldwide scrambled to present a united front. The United Nations convened an emergency session, assembling a diverse team of diplomats, scientists, and military advisors. In major cities, a strange dichotomy emerged. Streets emptied as many sought shelter, while others gathered in public spaces, eyes turned skyward in fearful anticipation. Military installations hummed with activity, forces on high alert despite the tentative ceasefire. Back in the forest clearing, Matthew and Elena made another breakthrough. Studying samples of Raxor's biology, they identified a unique protein responsible for the Draconis' remarkable cellular regeneration. This could change everything, Elena breathed, her eyes wide as she examined the test results. Imagine the medical applications. We could revolutionize the treatment of injuries, diseases. Colonel Harper's eyes gleamed with strategic calculation. And it could be our ace in the hole for these negotiations. Proof of our value as allies, not just another world to be conquered. As preparations for the diplomatic meeting intensified, Matthew found himself thrust into an unexpected role. His unique position as the first human to establish peaceful contact with the Draconis made him invaluable to the negotiation team. Ambassador Chen Wei, a seasoned diplomat chosen to lead Earth's delegation, drilled Matthew on Draconis culture and protocol. Remember, she emphasized, her voice steady despite the weight of her responsibility, every gesture, every word could tip the balance between peace and annihilation. The day of the meeting arrived with a tense, electric atmosphere. At the secure facility hastily prepared for the encounter, Matthew stood with Ambassador Chen, Colonel Harper, and a select group of human representatives. His palms were slick with sweat as he watched the Draconis shuttle descend through Earth's atmosphere. The alien craft touched down with barely a sound, its sleek design a stark contrast to human technology. As the hatch opened, Matthew took a deep breath, readying himself to face the Draconis delegation and the uncertain future that awaited them all. As the Draconis shuttle touched down, a deafening explosion rocked the facility. Alarms blared, and chaos erupted. Matthew's heart raced as he watched Ambassador Chen's composed expression falter for a split second. "What's happening?" Matthew shouted over the din. Colonel Harper's hand flew to his earpiece. His face darkened as he listened to the incoming report. "Unauthorized missile strikes," he growled. "Someone's trying to sabotage the negotiations." The Draconis delegation emerged from their shuttle, led by a towering figure with iridescent scales, Sub-Commander Krell. His reptilian eyes narrowed as he surveyed the panicked humans. "Explain this treachery," Krell demanded, his voice a low, menacing rumble. Ambassador Chen stepped forward, her posture straight and dignified despite the mayhem around them. "Sub-Commander, I assure you this attack was not sanctioned by our government. We are as shocked as you are." Krell's tail lashed angrily. "Your assurances mean nothing. We came in peace, and this is how you respond? Matthew watched in awe as Chen's demeanor shifted. Her voice took on a note of urgency, tinged with carefully calculated vulnerability. Sub-Commander, please. This attack only proves how desperately we need your guidance and partnership. Our world is fractured, yes, but with Draconis wisdom, we could unite and progress beyond such primitive aggression. Krell paused, his scaled brow furrowing as he considered Chen's words. Matthew held his breath, acutely aware that the fate of humanity hung in the balance. Meanwhile, Colonel Harper barked orders into his communicator, activating emergency protocols. Security personnel swarmed the area, securing exits and establishing a protective perimeter around the negotiation zone. In the midst of the frenzy, Matthew's mind raced. He caught Dr. Rodriguez's eye across the room and saw his own spark of inspiration mirrored in her expression. They had been working on adapting the Draconis regenerative protein for human use. But now... Dr. Rodriguez, Matthew called out, weaving through the crowd. The protein, we could modify it, create a rapid healing gel. If we offer it to the Draconis as a gesture of goodwill... Elena's eyes widened. Yes, a practical demonstration of human ingenuity and our willingness to collaborate. Let's get to the lab immediately. As Matthew and Elena rushed to their makeshift laboratory, they could hear Ambassador Chen continuing her diplomatic effort. Her voice carried clearly, each word carefully chosen to sway the Draconis delegation. We propose an immediate joint investigation into these attacks, Chen said. Let us work together to identify and neutralize this threat. It will be the first step in a new era of human-Draconis cooperation. In the lab, Matthew and Elena worked with feverish intensity. Their hands flew over equipment, mixing compounds and running rapid tests. Time seemed to blur as they pushed the boundaries of their scientific knowledge, combining human biochemistry with the alien protein's unique properties. After what felt like hours but could only have been minutes, Matthew held up a vial of shimmering, translucent gel. I think we've done it, he breathed. They rushed back to the negotiation area, where tensions remained high. Sub-Commander Krell was engaging in a heated discussion with Colonel Harper about security measures when Matthew approached. Sub-Commander, Matthew said, his voice steadier than he felt. We've developed something we'd like to share with you, a rapid healing gel based on Draconis biology, but enhanced through human bioengineering. Krell's attention snapped to the vial in Matthew's hand. Explain, he demanded. As Matthew launched into a technical explanation of the gel's properties, he noticed a shift in the Draconis leader's demeanor. The anger in Krell's eyes gradually gave way to curiosity, then to something resembling respect. You achieved this in mere minutes? Krell asked, his tone a mix of disbelief and admiration. We work well under pressure, Elena quipped, earning a surprised blink from the Draconis. Sub-Commander Krell turned to confer with his advisors, their conversation a series of low hisses and clicks. When he faced the humans again, his posture had softened slightly. Your quick thinking and scientific acumen are impressive, Krell admitted. Perhaps there is potential for an alliance after all. A collective sigh of relief swept through the human delegation. Ambassador Chen seized the moment, stepping forward with a datapad in hand. We've prepared a proposal for a temporary alliance, she said. In exchange for limited shielding technology to protect our key areas from potential future attacks, we offer access to specific resources and scientific knowledge that we believe will be of great interest to the Draconis. As Chen and Krell delved into the details of the agreement, Colonel Harper received another urgent communication. His face paled as he listened, and he quickly pulled Matthew aside. We've got a bigger problem, Harper whispered. Admiral Zexthar's ship just detected an asteroid on a collision course with Earth. It's big enough to cause an extinction-level event, and it's been hidden from our detection systems by the Draconis ship's presence. We have days, at most, before impact. Matthew's mind reeled at the implications. They had just narrowly avoided one disaster, only to face an even greater threat. He glanced at the Draconis delegation, then back at Harper. We need to tell them, Matthew said. If we're going to survive this, we'll need to work together. Harper nodded grimly. Agreed. Let's hope this fledgling alliance is strong enough to withstand the ultimate test, As they moved to interrupt the negotiations with news of the impending catastrophe, Matthew couldn't help but feel a mix of terror and exhilaration. The next few days would determine not just the fate of human-Draconis relations, but the very survival of life on Earth. Earth. Matthew's heart raced as he processed the gravity of the situation. The immediate threat of conflict with the Draconis had been averted, only to be replaced by an even greater danger. "We need to inform Subcommander Krell immediately," Matthew said, his voice low but urgent. Colonel Harper nodded grimly. They approached the negotiation table, where Ambassador Chen and Krell were deep in discussion over resource allocation. "Excuse me," Matthew interjected, his tone apologetic but firm. "We have a critical situation that requires immediate attention." All eyes turned to him as he explained the asteroid's approach. The room fell silent, the weight of the news palpable in the air. Krell's reptilian features hardened. "This changes everything," he hissed. "We must contact Admiral Zexthar at once." Within minutes, a holographic projection of the Admiral filled the room. His metallic scales gleamed as he listened to the dire report. "Our sensors confirm it," Zexthar said, his voice a low rumble. "The asteroid's composition is unlike anything we've encountered. Our standard protocols will be ineffective." Matthew stepped forward, an idea forming in his mind. What if we combine our technologies, a joint mission using a modified scout ship? Zexthar's eyes narrowed, considering. "It could work, but it would require a human Draconis team." "I'll go," Matthew volunteered, surprising himself with his own boldness. "As will I," came a familiar voice. Raxor stepped forward, his scales shimmering under the harsh lights. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Matthew and Raxor were briefed on the mission parameters, as technicians worked feverishly to modify a Draconis scout ship. The vessel's propulsion system was enhanced, and human-designed explosive devices were carefully integrated into its framework. As they prepared to board, Matthew caught sight of Elena. She pressed a small device into his hand. "It's a prototype shield generator," she explained. "It might buy you a few extra seconds if things go wrong." Matthew nodded, grateful for her foresight. He climbed into the scout ship, settling into the co-pilot seat beside Raxor. The Draconis' clawed hands danced over the controls, bringing the ship to life. They launched into the inky blackness of space, accompanied by a squadron of human and Draconis fighters. As Earth shrank behind them, Matthew felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The asteroid loomed before them, a monstrous amalgamation of metal and rock. Its surface was pockmarked and uneven, presenting a formidable challenge. "Our original plan won't work," Matthew said, studying the readouts. "The composition is too varied. We need a new approach." Raxor nodded, his reptilian features set in concentration. "What do you propose?" Matthew's mind raced, drawing on his knowledge of wildlife biology and the improvisational skills he'd honed in the field. "We could use the ship's propulsion system to create controlled explosions around the asteroid. If we do it right, we could alter its trajectory." Raxor's eyes gleamed with approval. "And we could use our energy weapons to superheat specific points, making them more susceptible to the explosive forces." They quickly relayed their plan to the squadron and began their approach. The scout ship darted around the massive rock, firing precise bursts from its propulsion system. With each detonation, the asteroid shuddered. Raxor skillfully wielded the energy weapons, creating weak points in the asteroid's structure. The human Draconis squadron provided crucial support, breaking up smaller fragments that threatened to break away. As they executed their daring plan, alarms blared on Earth. The hardline human faction, desperate to derail the Alliance, launched a final assault on the Draconis ship in orbit. Admiral Zexthar's voice crackled over the comms. "We're under attack, but we will hold. Focus on your mission." Matthew watched in awe as the Admiral's ship extended its advanced shielding, protecting not only itself but key areas on Earth's surface. The act of protection sent a powerful message, swaying many of the remaining skeptics. Back in space, Matthew and Raxor continued their delicate dance around the asteroid. The massive rock began to shift its course, responding to their carefully calculated assault. Suddenly, Matthew noticed a critical flaw in their approach. A large chunk of the asteroid was breaking free, threatening to cause significant damage to Earth even if they diverted the main body. "Raxor," Matthew called out, his mind racing. "We need to break up that fragment. I think we need to use the ship itself." Raxor's eyes widened as he grasped Matthew's meaning. "A kinetic impactor. It's risky, but it might be our only option." They quickly reconfigured the ship's systems, preparing for a controlled collision. As they approached the fragment, Matthew took manual control. His experience navigating treacherous wilderness terrain translated surprisingly well to maneuvering through the asteroid's uneven gravitational field. "Brace for impact," Matthew called out, gritting his teeth as he aimed for the center of the fragment. The collision was deafening, even in the vacuum of space. The scout ship shuddered violently as it smashed into the rock, breaking it into harmless pieces. Warning lights flashed across the control panel as systems failed one by one. Matthew and Raxor found themselves tumbling through space, their damaged ship spinning out of control. Emergency alerts blared inside the cockpit as they struggled to stabilize their trajectory. Just as hope seemed lost, a sleek Draconis fighter swooped in. A shimmering tractor beam enveloped their ship, arresting its wild spin. "Good work, you two," came the fighter pilot's voice over the comms. "Let's get you home." As they were towed back to Earth, Matthew and Raxor exchanged a look of relief and shared accomplishment. They had faced an impossible challenge and emerged victorious, their teamwork transcending the boundaries between their species. The asteroid threat neutralized, they returned to a world forever changed. The foundations of a new era of human-Draconis cooperation had been laid, built on mutual respect and shared purpose in the face of cosmic peril. As Matthew stepped out of the ship onto Earth's soil, he realized that this was not an ending, but a beginning. The stars beckoned, promising new adventures and challenges that would require the combined strengths of both humans and Draconis to overcome.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.